Sudip Bhaduri here with the big Barton film show every week here on Barton FM and also now on YouTube. I hope you're all well. Despite what's going on globally, I think watching a movie will take your mind off other things in your life. And there are some really good movies coming up in the near future, like Onward, the new Pixar movie out next week, the much anticipated epic battle story of Mulan, and the final outing for Daniel Craig in No Time to Die. 007 back and finds out more about himself and those around him. But what's on this week? Well, the film I've chosen to review this week is another conspiracy thriller. The film is called Dark Waters, Certificate 12A, made by Todd Haynes. Now, Haynes has been around for quite some time, top-class, first-rate director and producer, who was nominated for the brilliant racial drama back in 2002 called Far From Heaven, with Julianne Moore in an Oscar-winning performance. And since then, Cate Blanchett starred in a top drama called Carol. Dark Waters stars Mark Ruffalo, Anne Hathaway and Tim Robbins. And it's based on the New York Times article called The Lawyer Who Became DuPont's Worst Nightmare. Now, Ruffalo stars as Robert Bilott, a lawyer from Cincinnati in Ohio. He works for a company called Taft, Stettinius and Hollister Solicitors and represents major corporations including DuPont, one of the world's most powerful chemicals manufacturers. Against his firm wishes, he decides to help a poor farmer from West Virginia whose cattle become sick, insane, and are dying at an alarming rate, as are fellow farmers around the state. So are DuPont really polluting the water supply? And how can Ruffalo prove this? How can he make them rectify the mistakes? It feels more like a detective story with Bilott, a very unlikely hero, unflappable, indomitable, and polite. Remember a film called Erin Brockovich, starring Julia Roberts back in 2000, made by Steven Soderbergh, arguably Roberts' best performance as an actress on the screen, where she played a single mum campaigning against a major drug company on behalf of suspected cancer victims. The history of paranoid thrillers go back to Chinatown and the parallax view, so this is no new concept. The lesson is, do the right thing, fight your corner, and look for justice, not only for yourself, but on behalf of others. Anne Hathaway plays Ruffalo's beleaguered wife Sarah, who shows a lot of concern for her two kids. She was worried that they may have had birth defects. It's a strong drama. It's a dying breed of movies about greed, conspiracy and corruption. It feels more like an angry movie, and Haynes depicts this tale as an angry, fed-up Hollywood leading director. He needs to get his message across that the USA harbours a few corrupt, seemingly untouchable companies, and this film is worth seeing just to get a flavour of what goes on in the real world. Will this happen to you and your family? And who will fight your corner? Go watch this. Rating 3-star. Also released this week in your local cinemas, The Invisible Man, made by top horror movie expert Lee Whannell. Think Insidious Part 3, and Whannell produced the famous Saw series. The title is self-explanatory. It's based on the epic science fiction horror by H.G. Wells. And here, a woman thinks that she's been stalked. Her ex died under suspicious circumstances, but she thought this was a hoax, and she feels as if he may be back to haunt her. Or what is the unknown entity? This is quite nail-biting at times and anxiety-inducing, and it's quite a reasonable take on the brilliant Universal horror film of 1933 starring Claude Rains. There was a very inept version of The Invisible Man called The Hollow Man starring Kevin Bacon in 2000, which was forgettable. This is worth seeing. And we also have, at the other side of the scale of excellence, a film called Downhill with Will Ferrell, who has not made a great movie for some time, and top comedian Julia Louis-Dreyfus. It's about a couple who escape an avalanche and they have to evaluate their lives. This is totally boring, vacuous, pointless, and has been repeated many times before in previous movies. It's a remake of a film called Force Majeure back in 2013. Tinseltown just may be desperate to remake films like this. It's not mushy, absolutely cringeworthy. A turkey in late winter. So what about movie news on Barton FM's Big Barton Film Show? I understand that Steven Spielberg is planning to hand over the directorial reins for the next Indiana Jones movie. And he's giving it to Ford versus Ferrari director James Mangold. Now, he also made the brilliant Logan. What a guy to give it to. Mangold has produced action-packed, suspenseful and more visceral types of dramas. And that begs the question, will Mangold choose Harrison Ford? I highly doubt this. Ford is now in his 70s. Indiana Jones is a virile young American in his 30s. The legend that is Ford has to move on. Let's start this debate. Who could step into Ford's shoes as Dr. Jones? Now, Hugh Jackman has strong links with Mangold. He was in the Wolverine and Logan. But would he accept this? Because he's now approaching 50. It's got to be an established American actor in his 30s. So who could it be? I reckon that Harrison Ford will be asked to call it a day as Dr. Jones in that famous fedora. And Jordan Peele, now he struck gold as a director with horror movies Get Out and Us in the last few years. He's decided to remake a classic cult slasher movie called Candyman. Remember that from 1992 starring Tony Todd? If you utter his name 5 times, you'll meet your maker. Not quite sure when it's going to be released, but if anyone can get it right, it's Peele, because, as I said, his aforementioned first 2 movies were spine-chilling. And I hear that Creed Part 3 is in the works. And the great Michael B. Jordan, who stars as Adonis Creed, son of Apollo Creed, trained by Rocky Balboa, will reprise his role. The plot is yet unknown. I do like the franchise, which began with the first one, directed by Ryan Coogler, and Stallone was nominated for a BAFTA and a Golden Globe. He's aging now. What will happen to Rocky Balboa in Creed 3? I hear it may be an autumn 2021 release, and Michael B. Jordan is a high-class, charismatic actor. More from him in the years to come. And a quick apology. I said last week that Military Wives was being released this week. I stand corrected. It's being released next week, along with the Pixar movie, which I mentioned before, called Onward, which looks absolutely hilarious with the voices of Chris Pratt and Tom Holland. Enjoy your movies.